If you're taking a day off and listening to your favorite podcast while you tool around Chicago, why don't you check out the Podcast Republic app on the Google Play Store? If you're an Android user, it's a great app to use. Check it out on the Google Play Store. Read some of the thousands and thousands of great reviews that tell you all the wonderful things about it. And then when you're having your day off, you can listen to podcasts on a brand new podcast app, the Podcast Republic app on the Google Play Store.
Aux cord holder tested, driver approved.
I assume also Bluetooth.
Yeah, I know, but like...
Head on over to patreon.com/dissectingthe80s, and in just a few days, you'll get our newest bonus episode. That is about the 1982 classic, The Thing, to go along with our whole month of to go along with our whole month of Kurt Russell movies, Russellmania. We're doing Kurt Russell all month long, both on the main feed and on the Patreon. So head on over to patreon.com/dissectingthe80s and check it out. Welcome to Dissecting the 80s. I am the birthday boy, Tripp Lano, one half of the Mega Podcasting Powers. And with me, as always, is the previous birthday boy, the Macho Mandrew.
Andrew Lano. How's it feel to be old?
Oh, I've been old for a long time, son. This is not even a banner year. This is 34. It's a shrug.
Yeah.
It's a shrug.
Oh yeah, it's your birthday.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I've marked another year of existence, I suppose.
How old are you?
I was kind of excited for 33. 33 is like the Jesus year people talk about. Like that's
I haven't heard that.
As like you do a thing, like 30 is a big one. 33, I was like making jokes about. 30 is you've heard me say this before, but every time a friend of mine that turns 30, I send them a bereavement card for their youth. So that's my little thing.
My friend did that. For their 30th birthday, they threw a funeral for their youth. So yeah, everyone came in black and they had a little grave cake. It was real cute.
I had a Viking funeral for my youth. I made a little ship out of cardboard and I painted it. And then I had everybody write on Post-it notes, like things you should stop doing now that you're 30, like various, pieces of advice. And I read them all off and then we set it on fire. It was very fun.
That's fun.
Yeah. So anyway, 34, not very exciting, but Favorites-bruary, which we are concluding here with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Very exciting.
I'm already into this. Like, I'm excited for next year.
Oh, yeah.
It's so nice to be like, oh, I'm guaranteed to have a month of solid movies, especially coming off of Christmas where things can get dicey.
Yeah, for sure. And January can be tough, too, especially with the anniversaries. But yeah, no, this is one of my all-time favorites. And we watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off, so you know what that means.
We gotta go back. We gotta go dissect the 80s. It's your high school escapist fantasy. Something's got about your high school escapist fantasy.
When the mega powers explode.
I'm talking about the 80s. Oh, yeah.
Great Scott.
Cream of the crop. Oh, yeah.
Mega powers, yeah.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
So you would still consider this today, like as of recording day, that this is one of your top favorite movies?
This is a movie I think that has universal appeal, and I have some like bigger concepts I want to talk about with this movie, which I'm excited to dig into with you. But we've talked a lot on the show about how a decent portion of what we do is going back and ruining things that we liked. Mm-hmm. Like you watch them with fresher eyes and you're like, oh no. And another thing that you can do, and it's like completely valid to do, and I feel that a lot of folks struggle with this, and I'm not subtweeting a specific fan base, and like I want to get that out of the way. Like, so this is, if you want to hear my thoughts on whatever fan base, you can tweet at Dissect the 80s, and I will be frank with you and tell you. But this is not directed at any one group of people. It's okay to have something be really important to you and outgrow it and still remember it fondly for the way that it shaped you as a person, but no longer get anything out of it.
Yeah.
And I was afraid for a long time that would happen to me with this movie. And so I intentionally hadn't watched it in 10 plus years where I like made a point of watching it.
Yeah.
And then over the summer, I was at mom and dad's after doing some, like quarantine and get together.
It was a beach.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was on and I watched it and I was like kind of like biting my nails through like the first 10 minutes of it. And then very quickly, it's like there are some valid criticisms of this movie, but mostly it's not what I was afraid it was. And there's a few movies that I, really love that I say this all the time. Like I haven't gone back to say anything since I was in high school because it was really important to me then. And I'm afraid that if I watch it and I ruin it,
thing for you in high school.
I loved that movie. Like that movie really resonated with me. And as it's like, especially for a sort of dorky person who did not understand how to talk to women or girls at the time, like the like nice sweet boy got a cute girl and had this pleasant relationship.
He's kind of the like predecessor to a Ted Mosby, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I've been afraid to go back to it because like Ted Mosby, I want to throw off a bridge, and I'm like I don't want to feel like I want to throw Lloyd Dobler off a bridge. So this is another movie of the same ilk where it meant a lot to me. I asked you where you first came to it, and I'm interested to hear that again, although I think it's the same story as me, which is that I was in elementary school and I was taking a sick day and mom had this sort of like, my memory of it is like almost conspiratorial that it was like, ooh, I got something for you to watch. And we put this on and it was just like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And at the time I wasn't in high school, so I didn't even have that layer on it, but It became a thing where every time I was homesick, which was not a insignificant number of days. I was often had an ear infection or whatever, and I was home from school not feeling well. And I watched this movie all the time. There was a point in my life where I could do this movie A to Z, like not without the movie on, but if the movie was on, I could do every line, every character, every line. Obviously, that is not the case anymore, although there are still some great lines in this movie. But it meant so much to me, and I think this extends to you to some degree too, of like, a not insignificant part of my personality has to be shaped by this movie. And it's not like, oh, I intentionally took this thing from this movie and based my life around it. But the Ferris Bueller ideals of most of the rules aren't really real, figure out which ones are important and ignore the rest of them is, I think, a great philosophy for life, period. And yes, it's cliche and the kind of thing that you can buy on a bath towel. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. That's true. That's actually true. And it's not preachy or philosophical in a way that's deeper than it is. It's just a statement of facts. Like, you have to figure out the best ways to enjoy it while you're here because you only get one shot at this is, I think, really, really great. And it's weird because we talk a lot about movies that are written by adults and put words in the mouth of younger people. And it's like, oh God, right? Like that happens all the time.
Youths?
Yeah. And in this movie, it's definitely an older person putting wisdom in the mouth of somebody who's young. But in this particular instance, because I think that piece of advice is so general, like I don't think there's a person on earth who can't hear that message at age 10, Yeah. Regardless of what you want to do with your life and what you have to do, like I think everybody should be aware that like you got to make the most of it. It's a very general platitude. I don't think it's like deep and profound, but it's just nice. It's just a nice thing. So I think it weirdly works in this movie where you have John Hughes, who's a man in his 40s or whatever he is at the time that he's writing this, and he puts that in the words of this high school senior, which is kind of absurd on its face, but it works here because it's the right time of your life to have this attitude of like carefree existence and all that. And I don't know, I just think it really, really lands. And so watching it now is like, oh, I could watch this movie again tomorrow and really like it. And now that I know it's not going to be a problem for me, it's like nice to know the door's just open and not one I have to like poke around. I talked for like 3 unbroken minutes there, so I'm gonna shut up and let you get your point in.
No, it's funny. I don't quite have that same contemporary, like today I don't have that same feeling about this movie. I think maybe it's because I have anxiety or maybe just that I'm an adult, but I think I specifically said a high school escapist fantasy because that's what this movie is. I think it doesn't really read the same once you are an adult outside of high school. I think it feels a little different because in high school, that's the time in your life where you can kind of, it doesn't feel existential dread to feel like a ship adrift because you're in high school and you know that like you can there's time and you can like go to college, you can go take classes, you can do what like trade school. There's a whole world of opportunity, and if you were a ship adrift, there's time for you to find your mooring. But like at 29, wow, I'm 29 now. I forgot. At 29, like feeling like a ship adrift feels like that ship in the perfect storm. It's more like you're about to get sucked up the wave. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but I would say to you that like more than ever, it's important that you remember the message at the heart of this movie, which is like, as much as you feel that existential dread, you have to be able to take the time to remember to have a fun existence while you're here. You know what I mean?
No,
I get what you're saying. I don't want to poo-poo it. I think you're making a really good point. I'm just saying, I think that message hits even harder for me as an adult, because it's like, yeah, you know what? Sometimes you do just have to fake sick and go do something.
But also, I think it's that because this is one day in Ferris's life, and so they have to craft and cram so much storytelling and exposition of who he is into this world.
Yeah.
That like, it's kind of that Larry David syndrome where like when he split up all of his annoyances amongst 4 characters, they become really tolerable. But when they're all in Larry David's body on Curb Your Enthusiasm, you just want to push him in front of a train.
We are in the minority of feeling this way. Just the tweets are being furiously twote.
I know they are. I've tried to watch that show. It makes my body hurt because it's all I contort up.
Yeah, I don't like that kind of cringe. Like the cringiest episodes of The Office and Parks and Rec, I'm like, I don't need to watch this one.
Yeah, well, that's what I always say about why I like Parks and Rec more than The Office, because I never cringe and hate Leslie Knope. Yeah. But there are several times when I cringe and hate Michael Scott.
Right, yeah.
And not the point of this. Anyways, so because they have to cram all of that in, at times, like, Ferris just seems like an asshole.
Wow. Okay, I'm really curious to dig into this now.
And like again, like I don't think it's a bad movie. I enjoyed this movie. Obviously, I would watch it again. But I think it's more of like, oh, Ferris is kind of a bad friend. He's kind of selfish, and I think obviously, like if this was, the failed TV show happened, but like if you were to flesh this out more, maybe I wouldn't have these feelings. But because it turns into this, like, this movie feels like a Disney movie or a Disney Channel movie, but like written for teenagers, where like all the parents are morons. Your hero kid is like unstoppable and perfect, and then there's one adult who just wants to nail him. Do you know what I mean? Like
I do. I want to unpack a lot of these, but I feel that we should start progressing through the movie and unpack them as they come, because I completely disagree with you. But I think as we hit different parts of the movie, I will find the pieces to illustrate my side, and you can illustrate yours, and then we'll decide. The audience can decide who is right here. But my initial response to that is like, I just 100% disagree with you. I think Ferris Bueller is an asshole is an incorrect reading of this movie, but we will get there. Maybe you'll see it differently, and maybe you won't.
Like it's one of the rare instances where we have differing opinions on something. Doesn't happen often on the show, which is nice.
Yeah, never happens.
Oh yeah, it was Heather's and the ski movie. Was it skiing?
Yes, Better Off Dead.
Better Off Dead.
Yeah. There's a couple things I noticed more consciously on this watch than perhaps in other times. One is I absolutely love that it's a 75-degree day. Mm-hmm. This movie is better because you know that it's a 75-degree day, because everybody on the...
And it's late spring.
Well, yeah. It's probably April or May. It's probably, my guess is it's probably the first nice day of the year. Yeah. That first, you've come out of the winter. Anybody who lives somewhere where there's 4 seasons, you come out of the winter and there's that first one, and the sun temperature is great. The ground is still too cold for it to be really perfect. Like, you still got to have the jacket on because it's still cool even though it's 75 because the ground hasn't warmed up yet. Mm-hmm. But you're like, oh, it's here. We're done with the bad part for a while, I think, and we won't have those miserable gray days for a while. So I love that. It's such a perfect place to start.
Your classic John Hughes rich white family house.
Yeah, for sure. And this is the thing that I think, I'm saying this up front, and it's basically to get this out of the way. I think a valid criticism of this movie is that Ferris Bueller is greatly aided by the fact that he's a white man, and getting away with all this business is greatly aided by the fact that he's a white man.
A cute, precocious white man.
There is no good counter argument to that. It is a correct statement. Mm-hmm. I think that is a valid fact. I also think you can totally enjoy this movie knowing that it is a fantasy of some degree, and that it's okay for it to be a fantasy. And perhaps the version of the movie is different if Ferris isn't a white guy, but I still think it's a fantasy movie, and so it could be any teenager of any race or gender, and it still can be, like, the whole point of this is that it's like the perfect fantasy escapist day. So I think all of those criticisms are valid, but I also don't think this movie exists in the actual reality of our planet Earth. Much like when we talked about James Bond, where I'm like, the only way you can enjoy this movie is if you're like, this exists
in the
its
James
own
Bond world.
Right. James Bond universe is not ours. This isn't where we live. You shouldn't treat people like this. But James Bond can, because he lives in James Bond world. It's on the TV box. So anyway, I think that's a valid criticism. I don't have anything to say against it. I'm addressing it, and I'm going to just move on to talk about other things, because I don't think it's a very interesting conversation for me to belabor white privilege at length.
It's a correct statement. He's white privilege.
Yes. And that's
moving on.
I'm a straight white male. I have it too. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just be aware of it and try not to take advantage of it in ways that are don't take advantage of it in ways that are harmful to other people, and try not to take advantage of it as much as you can. That said, Ferris does it to like steal a restaurant reservation and get in a parade. I don't think anybody is like adversely attacked by it.
The car, I will argue.
The car is the crux of my argument for why I think you're completely wrong that Ferris is an asshole. I actually was having this imaginary argument with someone while watching the movie, and so the fact that you feel that way, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be interesting, because I have like the rebuttal.
I'm excited for that debate. I'm very curious.
So the other thing with a 75-degree day, it's the first day of the year when you're like, oh, I just want to blow off everything and go. And I feel that way as an adult too. First nice day of the year.
It was always when I used to work in an office as an admin, the first nice day of the year, because I would sometimes just like walk around the parking lot on my lunch break, just move my legs. And the first nice day of the year, I was like, I don't want to go back. I ruined the rest of my day because I just soaked up the sun. I rolled up my shirt sleeves all night. I was like, I unbuttoned my shirt. I was like, this is a lovely day. I have 4 more hours left at my 3 hours at my desk. Damn it.
In the cold air conditioning, miserable business. Yeah, no, you can't. You got to be careful doing that. I think this happens a lot of times on this show, and to the point where it's probably time to update the bingo chart. But the score in this movie does so much of the lifting, and it's, I think, one of those things you don't notice until you're looking for it. But in the opening scene, you've got this sort of like sad, almost mournful piano that's sort of selling Ferris actually being ill and his parents like, oh, Slugger, you're gonna be okay.
Steel Magnolias music. It's just like wistful.
Yeah, wistful is a great way to put it. So Ferris talks to the camera for the first time. He does his big plan of, you're bent over moaning, wailing, you lick your palms, that stuff. All really wonderful. I think this is one of the few times where I'm just assuming everyone listening to this has seen the movie. I hope that's not to the detriment.
I'm sure. We've probably done a couple 7 of those movies in our time.
Right. If you are one of those folks who's listening to this and having never heard it, I would love to hear that. But so he's faking sick, and I notice in the sweep across the room shot, in the corner is a mannequin with the trench coat, the glasses, and the hat, the outfit he wears to pick up Sloane later.
I read that in the trivia, but I didn't see it.
Okay. So he does his whole big speech to camera, and I think this really sets up the Ferris Bueller character in a way that you can't get away with in most movies. But he basically just explains his whole deal. He's like, lick your palms so they're clammy. It's a little childish and stupid, but then so is high school. And then he drops life moves pretty fast right here. And in 10 minutes, you've gotten the whole picture of this character. He's a little bit of a grifter is the wrong word. He's
grift adjacent. He's griftish.
Yeah. But I think I was reading quite a bit about it, and John Hughes talked a lot about casting this role, and he said it was really important. Like Matthew Broderick so nailed the tone, which is most people playing this part, you'd be like, one hand on your wallet. Yeah. And I don't think Ferris ever gets to that because of Matthew Broderick's performance.
McConaughey would be a weird Ferris.
That would be a bad Bueller. That would be a bad Bueller.
Fast, all right. He mentioned that he needed 15-year-old Jimmy Stewart.
Yes,
which,
yeah. That's what this performance is. It is. It's truly. I think Broderick has his box that he fits in. He also let fame go to his head and killed a person. So
shortly
perhaps
after
not the
movie.
greatest dude. Yeah. But I think at this point in the 80s, he had that boyish charm and could use it really effectively in the right role. There's this fabulous juxtaposition here where Cameron is sick in bed and Ferris is lounging by the pool in the Bermuda shorts and the tiki drink. And it's like the music changes really drastically when the shots intercut, which I think is lovely. But so this is the part where I think a lot of people read this differently than I do. And maybe I'm wrong and maybe they are. But Cameron's not actually sick.
That was my question. Do you think Cameron is actually sick?
No. And Ferris talks later about how Cameron was constantly, like, his parents don't give him a lot of attention. The house is very cold, all the stuff he talks about. I think Cameron is one of those people who has whatever the self version of Munchausen's is, which is he's just desperate for attention from these cold parents who probably didn't want to have a kid and did, and are like, we made a huge mistake. I don't care about this person. And so this guy doesn't have a lot going for him at home. And so he fakes sick because it gives him some attention, and the attention makes him feel good, is how I read it.
That's a very interesting read. I didn't think about it that way.
Because if he was actually sick, if he had the kind of cold he alleges that he has at the beginning of this, he would be miserable all day. You couldn't get over the cold that he has and have the day that he does. It's not possible. And I think the only explanation can be that Cameron isn't actually sick, and Ferris knows just as much as he needs this day off that his best friend needs it because his best friend is struggling. And so I actually think Ferris's day off is as much for Cameron's benefit as his own.
Well, there is that reading.
To me,
there is that reading that, like, it's all in Cameron's head that some people do.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
I think that's a fun thing to talk about. Like, I guess I could see where you get there, but I think that's rubbish.
Yes.
Ferris is a real person.
There apparently was. I don't know if it was like a deleted scene or like a deleted plot thread or it's in the novelization or something. But apparently it was discussed that Charlie Sheen's character used to be friends with Ferris and like had a
Charlie Sheen's character knows Ferris in the movie.
No, but like the story there, like, I don't know if it was cut or whatever, but like they were friends back in the day that he had a shitty home life and that Ferris didn't reach out and like help lift him up. And so now he's a drug addict, and his dad is the tow truck guy that like tows the car. Like it's, and his parents were the ones that like selling their house. That his mom, like, it's a web of connection that like,
yeah, that's too much.
That's far too much. And
that's prequelitis, is what that is.
And so the idea is that like Ferris is so pushy with Cameron because he didn't do this kind of stuff for Charlie Sheen. And like I wish I could remember the specifics, but I think it was like a deleted thread and scene or whatever that explained more. And like, thank God, because the movie doesn't need that.
Yeah, I did a lot of research on this one, and I did not come across that anecdote.
It was in the IMDb trivia, so like, do with it what you will.
Yeah.
But it was framed,
I'm not saying,
it was framed in it wasn't like some people think. It was like framed as like, originally this was the plan for the character.
Interesting. I meant to touch on this earlier, but I think the actual creation of this movie is kind of wild because John Hughes sold it, and then the writer's strike was like looming. Everybody knew it was around the corner, and so he knocked this movie out in under a week, and they shot from his original draft because he legally couldn't rewrite it, even though he's the director of the movie. So
wow.
So he like hunkered down, banged out this movie in a week, and they got it submitted and approved just under the wire for the strike.
Didn't we do a movie where like there was a writer's strike, so the director who was the writer of the movie was like, now in this scene you should improvise a bit, maybe talk about
Yes, we just did it recently, and I can't recall which movie it was. But this is that people are often creative about ways to get around stuff like this. I believe that's also the reason why Shane Black is in Predator.
We talked about that because they wanted him to. No, I don't think that was that. They just wanted him to write it, so they thought if they cast him, he would rewrite it for them. And he was like,
"Oh, okay.
No, you."
That's a different job.
Not how that works, buddy.
I get a different check for that. But yeah. So it's kind of wild that this movie is even good at all.
Well, so I will counterpoint your Cameron argument that like maybe it was more of a mental health day for Cameron.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And that like I know like for me sometimes my mental health day is like I want to lay in bed for a while and then like maybe go to the couch and do something there and then like have like a not out in the world day, and like if someone drags me out in the world, I will like charge my juice and like get into it eventually, right. But like that's not what I wanted to do the other day. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, but I think that what happens on this day is better for Cameron, including the car stuff, than it would be.
Including the car stuff?
Yeah, and we will get there.
Like I'm not trying to disprove your point. I truly like obviously I just want to provide counterpoints because
I think it's fine. I'm not offended. Yeah.
I am so fascinated to see where you're going to go with the car.
The car is
We'll get there. No, don't spoil it now.
Okay.
But I'm fascinated. You're
okay. I'm working on a case here. I'm building the first level. So I get what you're saying. I do, but I also think that there's a wide gap between what you're describing, which is like I'm taking a day off because I'm at the end of my rope and I gotta just recharge my batteries a little, and then the person drags you out to like lunch, versus this is like a day you talk about for the rest of your lives. That we cut school and then we went to this incredible museum, and then we went to a ball game, and then we went to the stock exchange.
There's
for some
more hours
reason,
in this day than there should be, I feel like.
yeah. And then my friend got in this parade float, and like you would talk about this for the rest of your life.
Yeah, because ultimately the story you end up telling sounds like, okay, Grandpa. Sure.
Well, yeah, but you know it's real.
Of like the person. Okay, I'm sure, Grandma.
But you know it's real, and that's all that matters. So anyway, we get introduced to Edward Rooney, our foil in this movie, and
obligatory
played by
Jeffrey Jones statement.
Jeffrey, he's a bad dude who
he's a monster.
Hard to say anything, but that it was pretty gross what he did. Glad that he seems to have gotten some help, and he's starting to work again. So he must. I didn't know that. Yeah, he's been in a few things in the last 5 years, including the Deadwood movie. Now I don't know if he was an original Deadwood cast member, and then that was like
he was in Deadwood at some point. I don't know if he was original, but he was in Deadwood at some point. Apparently.
Okay, so he's in the Deadwood movie as well. Oh, well. Anyway.
This movie has Jeffrey Jones and Ben Stein in it. Two unsavory fellows.
Right. So. Well, and also Matthew Broderick killed someone.
Yes.
I'm laughing as I say that, but it's the absurdity of it's like the least icky of the people to me feels like the guy who
took
killed
2
the
lives.
Person. Yes. But he is on the phone calling Ferris's mama, who's like, "Oh no, he's
high
very
schools
sick."
Have deans?
He's
the dean of students. That's what it says on his desk.
Oh, okay. I always got that meant vice principal in other school languages.
So, like, I think that this movie would have benefited from a superintendent cameo from someone, where it's like, because if you distill this character, it is a principal of a high school so focused on catching one student that he leaves school to hunt down that student and then breaks and enters into that student's home to catch the student in the act of truancy.
All right, buckle up, because this is a big part of the argument. So go ahead and finish.
So, like, I think it would be funny if there was like a moment, like the stinger at the end, instead of being the school bus thing, was like him getting back to the office and Edie McClurg's like, "Oh, Mr. Rooney, the superintendent's in your office." And he's like, "Where have you been for the last 6 hours of the day?" And he's like, "Ferris Bueller," and he's like, "Ferris Bueller has been in the hospital." Like, or like, he has no name, but he's like, "One student? What about all the rest of them who are here?"
All right, so here's the thing with Ed Rooney. Imagine me like cracking my knuckles and getting into it here. Let's see. There we go.
That's a good one.
Ferris has had such a profound, optimistic uplift effect on the school that Rooney, who is a kind of guy who is only happy when the students under him are miserable, hates his rotten guts. And this is a very, very much like Ferris
I was not dissing that concept of the character. I was just saying, like, when you distill it to its purest form, it is a
very funny
school for one student, which is banana pants.
Right, but it is because Ferris. It's hard to say Ferris's unrelenting optimism is so antithetical to Rooney's life and point of view that he cannot stand this kid getting one over on him in any way. And so that's what drives him to do the ludicrous thing you're talking about. Like, it's completely bonkers that one of the principals would be
also
aggressively
has
trying to track down.
Weird color to it when you later learn what Jeffrey Jones.
Yeah. Okay, well that's a grosser reading of it that I think is.
I know, but it's a weird ironic thing.
So anyway, he's telling Mama that he's been absent 9 times, and there goes Ferris hacking the computer and turning it down. Yeah. Well, it's funny. John Hughes just computers are magic is sort of his big thing for a couple of years there, because you got War Games, this, and then Weird Science.
War Games? I don't think.
Maybe it's just this and Weird Science.
Yeah. Because there's no computers in babysitting.
Right. So I just always wondered, like, did John Hughes? You're right. John Hughes not at all involved on War Games. I think I just
Dad just flipped out his newspaper and went, he didn't direct War Games.
But yeah, so I think it's like I genuinely wonder if it's that John Hughes had just gotten his first computer and was like, well, this thing's kind of crazy. I have no idea what John Hughes sounds like.
That was almost Frank Oz.
I think John Hughes is more like a. I just gotten my first home computer and I was typing scripts on it.
I also could not, like, if you put a gun to my head and made me describe John Hughes to a police sketch artist, I would be dead.
He looks like a Republican from 1988.
Huh, that's not what I was picturing, like a Jim Henson type.
No, you got glasses, like almost disheveled, but like kind of boring. He only ever did one commentary track. It was for this movie. It was on the first DVD release of this, and then never again. They've never re-released it. So somebody found it, ripped it off the original DVD, and it's out there, and you can track. If you Google it, you can listen to it. I listened to some chunks. I didn't listen to the whole thing. But it's just him talking to no microphone about this movie, and he clearly loves this movie, like in a way that you hope that all creators feel about the art they make.
It's definitely his favorite piece.
Yeah, for sure.
I just am a weirdo, and I'm like, yeah, but what about Adventures in Babysitting? What about that old chestnut that no one really talks about?
I like that one a lot, too.
No, but if you're talking about, like, what's your favorite John Hughes movie? That's not even on the Family Feud board.
Right. Yeah, no, you're right. Well, the problem is he only hit home runs for like an 8-year period. That's pretty ridiculous.
And I feel like to the general public, Adventures in Babysitting is a modest triple. Right.
I mean, you're talking about a guy whose writing output between 1983 and 1990 was Mr. Mom, which we don't love, but a lot of people do, Vacation, 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, European Vacation, Weird Science, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller, Some Kind of Wonderful, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, She's Having a Baby, The Great Outdoors, Uncle Buck, Christmas Vacation, and Home Alone.
What's She's Having a Baby?
That's it's a rom-com. It's Kevin Bacon. The actress is Elizabeth McGovern, but I've never actually seen it.
Sounds familiar, but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's just bonkers. And then in '92, he's still pumping them out. He's got Beethoven, the dog movie.
He wrote Beethoven?
Mm-hmm. And Dennis the Menace and Home Alone 2.
I think I watched Dennis the Menace as a kid.
And then you go down a cliff and you got problems where it's suddenly he's doing Baby's Day Out, and then it's just all over from there basically. But yeah, no, he also wrote 101 Dalmatians and Flubber.
The live action Dalmatians?
I think so.
That is a weird. So, my friends and I watched that a couple years ago when I was down in Florida, and we were like, we'll throw something on while we're eating our lunch, and we picked 101 Dalmatians because we're like, it's the original movie's pretty simple, oh boy, is Glenn Close doing everything in that movie.
Oh yeah, she's wild in that. She awakens something in some people, I assure you.
Oh yes.
So this is the beginning of my thesis here. So buckle in.
Go ahead. Go to the chalkboard.
I don't know. We don't know who initiates the call, or maybe we do know who initiates the call. But Ferris is on the payphone.
Oh, the payphone. I don't think we know who initiates.
All right. So Ferris is on the payphone. There's a payphone at school. Ferris is on the other end at home. The kids are on talking at school.
I would imagine he called the payphone.
Yeah, maybe, because he does it. He does end the first part of the conversation by going, "Give me somebody else." Uh-huh. But I'm sure you have known people who are the quote unquote mayor of the thing, right? Like,
yeah.
People use that term. That's the mayor of the bar or whatever. Ferris is the mayor of the high school. Everybody knows who he is. Ferris is the guy that you go to when you have a problem, and Ferris helps you fix your problem. But there is no part of any of the of these things that feel transactional to me, which I think is the key to saying Ferris Bueller isn't an asshole. Because if Ferris Bueller was an asshole, Ferris Bueller would be doing these things in order to rack up some imaginary points that would later benefit him. But the only thing that Ferris seems to want to get out of these interactions is helping other people not follow rules he thinks are arbitrary and stupid. So he's talking to these two guys, and he's like, they're talking about some test, and then another guy who's at the edge of the payphone is like, "Oh man, he was going to help me get out of summer school." And he's like, "I hope he's okay. I really don't want to go to summer school." There's not like I paid him or I got him a date with my sister or what. I mean, Ferris is a girlfriend, but whatever. There's no part of it that seems like anything but just pure altruism. Like, he just likes to help people. He especially likes to help people if it means he can get one over on Rooney, who's a dick. And he thinks that high school is a waste of most people's time. Or wastes. High school, at least I will say, wastes a lot of time, which is true of also work, in that I think high school is the best preparation for the real world that people don't really realize, of just like, you can do a lot of thumb twiddling and some bursts of working, which is basically how it is. But to me, Ferris is so intent on improving other people's lives. It's just the opposite of an asshole. And I think that Ferris is an asshole is a common reading of this movie. I think a lot of people feel the way you do, but I just completely disagree. And I think the movie,
I mean, I didn't think about that perspective of the like summer school kid and all that. I think if there were more of that peppered throughout, because I don't think the test thing, I think,
there's more. Oh, there's more. We're coming to it as we go, but there's more, I assure you.
The test thing was just that there was a test that day, because he talks about that in the beginning. I have to go to school. There's a test today.
Yeah. He is talking to that first jockey kid about something, sort of helping him with something, and then the other guy comes in with summer school, and then the third person comes up and he goes, "Oh, give me to somebody else," and they just hand it to a random woman, and they're like, "Do you know who Ferris Bueller is?" And she's like, "Oh, I definitely know who Ferris Bueller is." And she hops on the phone and is like, "Hey Ferris, how are you feeling?" Like, she also knows exactly who this is. She's concerned about his well-being, whatever. There's like 8 people whose well-being you were concerned about in high school, maybe, right?
Yeah, well, I think that's the other thing, is that like a lot of people picture themselves as the Ferris, and I'm like, you're not. In no universe are you the Ferris. Like, I know you now as an adult. There's no way you were the Ferris. Like, I was like, if you're anybody, you are maybe the girl whose friend's sister's brother's cousin saw Ferris pass out at 31 Flavors last night. Maybe. But like, you're not Ferris, you're not Cameron, you're not Sloan.
So the difference is, and we talk about this a bunch, like, I think there is a very valid reading where most of Hogwarts probably thinks Harry Potter is an asshole.
Oh
right?
my God.
Like, the movie is from the whole narrative, the movie, the books are from his perspective, but there's like 500 other kids at school. The difference is
500 white kids.
Well, that's the same as this high school. It's almost like you should be more diverse when you write about places.
The first time you write things.
But I will say, like, we see opposite evidence in this movie that the people in this high school, not only do they love Ferris, they're genuinely worried about him. The rumor about Ferris being sick spreads like wildfire, and that's because everybody likes this kid. There's no your favorite person, E.D. McClurg, later she rattles it off, right? She's like, the sluts, the jocks, the sportos, the motorheads, they all think he's a righteous dude. It's like,
righteous dude.
This person can't exist, right? Like, and I think
impossible. Maybe it is to go back to the Heathers conversation, it's a different kind of heightened world where like
yeah,
that's I don't know. Maybe it just doesn't resonate as strongly with me as an adult. I like I said, I still like this movie. I don't want people to think that I like hate Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing it. It's like, oh, you monster, you hate my favorite movie, or not my favorite movie, but you know, the one I picked for this. But I do think like I was having that imagined argument while watching it, and then it was funny to come onto the podcast and you're like, oh, this is actually what I think. I'm like, oh, great, I've been prepared to have this debate with you. It's like Lincoln Douglas up in here. Let me tap my note cards. But yeah, I think that like this is one of the key, and it's not a big scene, and it's one to easily gloss past because everybody laughs at Ferris using the barf noises on his keyboard and like,
which apparently was like that's like an $8,000 synthesizer in the 80s.
Yes,
so like
yes.
No car, but you can have a small down payment on a car.
I mean, that computer probably cost $5,000 too.
It's also weird that like. Later in the movie, Jeannie, who I love, Jeannie is like a stand-in for queer people in this movie. Angry, bitter at the way the handsome white dude just like skips along without a care.
Okay, but you're not acknowledging the fact that at the end, Jeannie realizes that her brother is right and she is wrong.
But she at one point says like, he got stuck with a computer where I got the car. And I always imagined like it seemed to me Jeannie would like a computer. That feels like a thing she would enjoy.
Yeah, Jeannie does seem like a smart kid. Ferris is much like the two of us in that we sort of were smart enough to just get by without trying very hard. And I smart, skated on by.
You were perceived as very bright early on so that you could then skate. As everything else rose up, and you just kind of glided until you hit your wall. You hit where it met again, and it was like, oh, well.
The other thing too that I think gets thrown around and I think is a valid criticism to some level, but it's like if you have a choice between two relatively equal qualified people, you're always going to pick the better hang. And so I have always strove to be the better hang. And that goes back to like high school. Like I would make jokes in class. Like I wouldn't be disruptive and shitty, but like I would joke about things or I would whatever. This like all through my whole life, I've been the same sort of jestery doofus that I am on this podcast. Like I don't take a lot of things very seriously unless, you know, it's you can do those things, of course. Yeah. And like being liked by people makes like if someone likes you, they're more likely to do things to your benefit. And I have always just attempted to have people like me because it's just generally better if things go to your benefit. You know, you get the better grade for participation in class or whatever it is. So Ferris just maximizes that, I think, as like the ultimate charming guy. That's what he does. So he finally convinces. I can't believe we're only like 14 minutes into this movie. He finally convinces Cameron to come over.
And I do like Cameron's freak out in his little like dingy little car.
Yeah.
I almost wish that it didn't. So we're on the dashboard looking at Cameron, and then we cut to the outside when he gets out of the car, and then cut back in to the empty car, and then we see him come back around. I almost wish we didn't cut away. Like I wish we stayed in the car on the dashboard, and as he like slammed the door and walked away, we stayed in this empty car for like a 30 seconds to a minute, and then the gravel crunch as he comes back to be like,
yeah, I think that's a great shot for sure. Or you see him like walk by the back of the car and then you hear the gravel. Yeah, I would enjoy that as well. So he finally comes over and they're like, oh, we got to get Sloan out of school. And this starts the first bit of business where we see the cleverness of Ferris that he only seems to use to get like minor improvements to the life of the people immediately around him.
It's sort of like that old question you used to ask on Adventure Pants, which was, what is the superpower you would want that does not change your life in a dramatic way, but kind of helps you out a little bit? That's sort of Ferris's general MO. Yeah,
Ferris is the guy who can call the coin flip. Like he that is his superpower. He's able to call the coin flip. And so he used it to his advantage. Here we have this bit where Cameron is calling Principal Rooney, pretending to be Sloane's father, who's just lost his mother, to get her out of school.
Is the audience supposed to think, because we don't see Cameron for a while, is the audience supposed to think that this is Sloane's dad and that Sloane's grandmother did actually die?
The voice seems too obviously a voice to me for that. Like it's hard to separate because I know the answer to the question, but the voice is a little goofy, right? To me. Yeah. They're like, now listen to me, Mr. Rooney.
Listen to me, Buster.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there. You did a really good one.
I'll kick your keister. It's almost Lifestyles of the Rich and the Famous. Almost.
Yeah, it is Robin Leachy. Yeah. I'm going to come down there and give you a piece of my mind. Mm-hmm. You're better at it than me, but yes, that's the general vicinity of it. Anyway. Rooney is like, oh, this is Ferris Bueller. I got this little bastard. And he starts coming after the, oh, why don't you roll the road dead bones down here? I obviously, Jeffrey Jones, not a great guy. Really fantastic performance.
Like we said,
here. Truly all
great
time.
Performance.
Yeah.
Awful person.
Yeah. So the bit where Edie McClurg is, she is, I laughed out loud watching her at several points in the movie.
I wish there was just like a few tablespoons more of her in this movie.
Yes, you definitely could use.
I don't need her to be like the Beetlejuice, the musical version of Beetlejuice, where she's everywhere. But a few more tablespoons couldn't hurt.
Yeah, there's a world in which she somehow is picking up Ed at Ferris Bueller's house instead of the bus. That's very funny.
I would love that. In like
it's her way home, and she's like, "Oh, Ed, you need a ride?"
In like a minivan, I feel like.
Yeah.
Well, apparently she did her own hair. Cause she
really? That's genius.
She envisioned this like 60s poof, but the hair people were all like, we can do Sloane's blowout. And they were like, I don't know how to do this. And she was like, I got it. And did it herself. And so
that rules.
John Hughes saw it and went, how many pencils can you fit in that thing? And so they put that in the movie.
Yeah, she's wonderful. I unfortunately I saw that she's not doing too well health-wise. She has early onset dementia, which is just awful, but she is truly tremendous in this movie. Really good.
She's great in everything I see her in.
Yeah. So I love this bit with like Ferris calls and she's like frankly in like Ferris Bueller's on line 2, and Ferris, he clicks the button over and Ferris doesn't even wait for him to make a sound. He's just like, Mr. Rooney, you my sister send my assignments. That'd be great. Thanks. Bye. Have a good day. Click. And then he has to go, lie down. And I think this is the good illustration of Rooney is like, he's this big sheriff, but he's really all hat and no cattle. As soon as his authority is challenged, he's a little mewling quim. He's a little weenie.
I almost wish, and again, like this is very rare for me to say, because normally everything is like, cut it down. You don't need to show everything. I almost wish that we had like seen Ferris standing next to Cameron as he's talking, realize what Rooney is doing, and then be like, hold on, and then go to the other room to like make his call to like show more activeness, I guess.
Right.
That he's like, this wasn't a great, that's like, because it almost feels like in the movie that like Ferris's plan was, I'll call 3 minutes after you call.
Yes,
so, yes. Like, it seems like very the Joker, where it's like, hang on, how long is your plan?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I would love that. I think that would be an improvement to see him do it in real time, to go like, and then run out to like run to Jeannie's room and use her second line or whatever. Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
I want Sloane's jacket.
Oh, it is a really nice jacket.
I want Sloane's. It's a fringe. It's a white leather fringe number. It's great.
Yeah, no, for sure. She gets absolutely nothing to do in this movie, but the only thing they give her to do is look nice, and so she does a great job.
Apparently, Molly Ringwald really wanted to be in this movie, and he said, it's not big enough for you, which, like, if I were the actress playing Sloane, obviously I know that it's a very small role. I would be like, fuck you, dude.
You're totally right, but also at that point, he's worked with Molly Ringwald like 3 times at that point. He's like, you're a star, kid. This is not for you.
I did it.
I also think if you put too big of a star in Sloane's part, it's distracting.
Yeah, that's true.
Like if you put Molly Ringwald there, it's a Molly Ringwald movie.
Yeah, because at this point, Broderick is mostly theater.
He's acted. I mean, War Games had come out and really done a lot for him.
Yeah, but at this point, Molly Ringwald was like the queen.
Oh, megastar. Yeah.
So like he may have had War Games, but she's like, that's cute. Your little computer movie. Which one of my movies do you want to talk about?
Right. Yeah, War Games is 83. So he had definitely been established at this point, but you're totally right. I love that Cameron's got belt and suspenders on. It's never brought up later in the movie, but under his Gordie Howe jersey, both belt or pants.
Just a costuming note in general. You don't need both. It drives me nuts.
You don't need both ever. Not for a movie or real life.
But that's what I mean. Like, it drives me nuts in a costuming situation when, like, I see a character wearing belts and suspenders because it's old-timey. And I was like, that's not how that works.
Yeah, suspenders do the job that the belt does. I will say, the first pair of suspenders I got, I was like, oh, are they supposed to match the belt? And then I was like, oh, wait, you don't wear both.
Mm-hmm.
Fun little tidbit that I learned that I didn't know previously, the Gordie Howe jersey that Cameron wears throughout the whole movie was actually given to the movie by Gordie Howe himself. They like asked and he was like, yeah, here. And I sent it and he had a quote. It was like, it was awesome to see that big number 9 on the big screen. That was awesome. I thought it was great.
It wasn't even autographed though. It was just,
no, it's not. It like he provided it basically, like as permission. He sent it to them.
It's just weird that like they asked him and not like, I don't know, the team, like, hey team, could you give us a Red Wings jersey?
I think somebody knew Gordie and it was just like, yeah, here, I'll send it to you.
I also love Edie McClurg being Rooney for a few seconds because he's not on the phone. Waving him over, like, come back.
Yeah. So here we get the car, the Ferrari California, not this car, but the model Ferrari that they show in this movie sold for
real.
$12 million in 2008.
Wow.
No, it is a real car. There was a time
it's not a real
when
Ferrari.
No, so it's confusing. This is a thing that happened on the early days of the internet, and I distinctly remember like knowing this fact and then learning the actual fact, and so it's convoluted. The model of car that they say in the movie is real. It's a Ferrari GT California, and the year and all that is correct. But for the movie, they were like, you absolutely under no circumstances are going to do anything with that car except shoot it while it's stationary. Like, you are not going to do anything. So they went and got a specific kit car that is from a smaller, it's called like a Moderna or a Medina Spider. I think it's Medina. I think Moderna is the vaccine. And
probably
that's on my brain.
Moderna.
Yeah. I think it's a Medina Spider. And so it looked a lot like this Ferrari. So they bought this car that looked a lot like the Ferrari, and then they made it work for the movie. They like made a couple of movie cars.
Got it. And then they just called it the real thing.
Yes.
So the name is real, but the car we're looking at is not that name.
The car you're looking at in some of the shots is actually that Ferrari, but mostly is not. I think they had it for still like, I think in one of the garage is the real Ferrari, and then it never again is the real Ferrari. I think that's right.
That would make sense.
I did not go super in the weeds on this. It's not something that personally interests me. So if you're the car person out there who's listening and is infuriated, just tell us the right thing and I'll retweet you.
Does Ferris have a license? Is that established, or does he just want a car?
We don't know that he has a license, but I think that he does.
Okay. Also, like, they could have just picked up Sloan in that car and then taken Cameron's car into the city.
Yes, absolutely. That is not a nice guy move. That is a solid point in your favor of Ferris.
But that's my big thing is that, like, why the fuck would Ferris give a shit if he pisses off Cameron's dad? He doesn't have to live with it. So, like, yeah, I'm going to steal your dad's car.
So I agree. I what you're saying is all true. But I think from Ferris's point of view, it's like, I have a plan to fix it. The, like, run the car backwards thing. It's objectively stupid. It's not a bicycle. That's not how this works. Yeah. It's not a pedometer. But he's like, oh, we'll just fix it later. I don't have to worry about it.
Is the Matilda thing where they put because in Matilda, they, like, put a gadget, like, onto the...
Yeah.
Is that a real thing?
I think it used to be a real thing. I think the Matilda bit of the slimy used car guy is a real thing. Because we talked about this in the used cars episode. I think...
Obviously, the reverse accelerator thing, that's fake. But I imagine that there had to have been a way for you to accomplish that.
Or you just, like, took the gauge off and rolled the numbers back by hand. Like, that's a thing that people would do. So we talked about this a little bit in the used cars episode, but like, we are too young for that to be anything but a pop culture ephemera from a previous generation, because they regulated that kind of stuff out of, like, that doesn't really, I'm sure it happens, but it's like very rare that you get that kind of used car slimy person, because like, it's just regulated out. Like, you get caught and then you're done. Again, I'm sure someone's going to be like, well, what about this? I'm sure it happens, but it just used to be the default was you're getting ripped off on a used car, and now it is not the default anymore.
Handsome ass Kurt Russell's giving you a car.
Right, exactly.
Which, like, he could sell me anything.
Oh, for sure. I've been watching a lot of Kurt Russell movies, not from the 80s.
To prepare yourself for WrestleMania.
I have so much Kurt Russell talk that's coming next month. You guys don't even know. I'm going to have so many recommendations in the mailbag. It's a great time to sign up for Patreon because I've been plowing through these weird 90s and other eras of Kurt Russell, and I have found, no joke, some absolute gems.
Was it Kurt Russell and Patrick Swayze that I confused for Tango and Cash?
I believe so, yes.
I know we said Sloane doesn't do much in this movie because she doesn't, but I do love the delivery because Rooney walks her out and like gives this like little monologue about like what death means and how he lost his grandmother. And she turns to him and this like full deadpan just says, "I thank you for your warmth and compassion, Mr. Rooney." And it's like the perfect delivery of this like, go away now.
Yes. Yeah, Mia Sara is excellent in the movie. It's just that she doesn't get a lot to do. So, like, Cameron gets way more to do than she does. She's definitely the third.
She's also only 18 when they filmed this, which is crazy.
Yeah. This car and this movie in general really makes you want to own a convertible. They're like zipping down the highway into the city.
Yeah, I did like that.
Beat
again,
City is playing.
Not a cool move on Ferris.
I agree with you. It's just teenager thinking of like, oh, it's not a problem, I'll deal with it later. And like, obviously it's a problem later, but I don't have a rebuttal there, but I will have more rebuttals later.
And then Jeannie, we get the long tracking shot of Jeannie down the hallway of like, white privilege, man. Which is basically the crux of her character theory. Is like, Ferris gets to do whatever he wants, and that's annoying to the rest of us.
Sure. Because I think Jeannie studies really hard and gets good grades, straight A's maybe. You know, I think she's a really good student. And I think Ferris skates by and does almost as well as her without trying. And she hates that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is another thing. The guy's walking down the hallway with the Pepsi can collecting the things. And she slaps that out of his hand. But you notice what he says to her is, what if you need a favor from Ferris Bueller someday? Not... like, it's a favor from Ferris Bueller. It's not a transactional thing. Ferris gives freely his wisdom and his ideas.
I mean, doesn't the mafia also give freely?
I think the mafia wink wink gives freely, as the audience couldn't see at home. But Ferris, there's no wink.
We don't know. We only see a 2-hour stretch of this life. We don't know what Ferris is doing.
I know.
We don't know whose kneecaps Ferris is breaking. Whose fingers got a little squished by Ferris Bueller.
This next part is one of my few quibbles with the movie, and it's Rooney calls Sloane's house, and it's this very sad message. It's to your point before of like, when did Sloane know she was skipping?
When did they chain this?
Right. Because if Sloane knew she was skipping, why did she go at all?
Mm-hmm.
It's like way more complicated. So this
also I wanted the like a line of like, both of Sloane's grandparents died before she was born.
Yes.
Because she hears Sloane, like the nurse comes in and says, "Sloane, I need to speak with you." Instantly she's like putting her coat on. She's like, "Well, this is Ferris coming to get me."
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yes.
Well, why do you know that?
Right. And why did you... what I needed was like, I had a test first period and then Ferris picked me up. That's how the whole plot got set in motion. You're exactly right. Like, my grandparents are long dead. Like, they're long dead. I never knew them. A little bit there tidies this up a little bit for me. It's not a big quibble. It's a great movie, but I think that's a valid criticism.
Just a little wrinkle.
Yeah. And I do love the whole bit in the garage where Ferris tips the guy and he's like, "Of course they'll take great care of your car." And they're walking down the thing and then you see the car peel out immediately for the joyride. Yeah. Like I love them walking away as it happens. So Mama Bueller checks in, and this is another weird one. It's like, she came all the way, I guess she's a realtor, so she's probably driving all around town. Anyway, she comes all the way home to check on him, and she sees him sleeping, and that's like, she doesn't do like a check for a fever. It seems like... I
always wonder, because as a kid, you have this like idea in your head that your parent, like even while it's like, if like sleeping, if I was up later than I should be, I was like, well, what if Mom and Dad come in to check on me? And I've never asked them but I've always been a little curious. Like, did you ever in your life like just open the door on me sleeping just to be like, yep, still a child?
I don't think that
didn't turn old overnight.
He didn't big.
He didn't big.
I think that probably stops before you start schooling, but I think that is a thing like a new parent does, like checks in on the baby or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, in fairness, like he is ill. Like I could see her checking in like, oh, do you need anything or whatever? Mm-hmm. If I was sick, mom would check in on me. I don't think that's crazy, but it's like she creaks the door open and he's got his whole elaborate Rube Goldberg snoring machine. And she's like, oh, he's asleep. Click.
Yeah. Because I wonder, like, mom, let us know, if we were sick and you came in to check on us and assumed we were sleeping, would you come over and like check the forehead? Would you?
Yeah. It's a good question. We could ask moms in general. There are some who listen, presumably. Is that are you checking a forehead on a sleeping kid?
But our mom is listening. We know that one.
No, I know. I'm just saying we could just ask it more broadly.
There's the weird wedding conversation.
So that's a thing that I think just boils down to Ferris is trying to have the craziest, wildest, most fun day possible. And in that moment, he's like, that would be crazy. Like he wants he's trying to live the embodiment of a crazy story that you tell forever. And it's like, how'd you get married? Oh, you won't believe it. We were skipping school.
Okay. That's fair.
I still think it's ridiculous. I do think it's patently ridiculous that he wants to... It kind of
bogs down the movie a bit because it comes out of left field and doesn't feel like because they're in the stock market having this conversation. It's not like they're walking down the Vegas Strip and they see like Chapel of Love or something.
Right.
Like, so it just comes out of nowhere and kind of slows the movie for a second to be like, what are we talking about?
The movie taps on the brakes twice. It's here, and then the second one is with Cameron catatonic at the pool.
Yeah.
And the second one, I think, goes on a little too long. It's a 100-minute movie.
We don't need the river sequence. We can cut to the pool.
Right. But the river sequence is where he talks about like how he's actually in love with Sloane. I think you get a lot of Cameron info there that's good. I just think like that break tap's a little too long for me. It's actually really interesting. One of the things I learned from doing research and skimming the commentary is the original order of the movie. The parade came before the
art museum
visit, which is
mistake.
A huge mistake. And it obviously they fixed it, but I can't even conceive of a world where you're like, oh yeah, thinking about an epic day that I was having and I got into a parade that afterward I was like, you know what I want to do is quietly stare at some art. Like that just speaks to someone who's never performed ever. Because when you get that jolt of emotion, it's hard to come down from it. That's why rock stars have drug problems. I mean, that's what it is. Like, I have done like improv and I've done a couple of live podcasts with you that obviously the stakes are way lower. And like, sometimes you come off that and you're like vibrating and it's like, that was incredible. Like, oh my God, how cool was that? And it's like, this guy was on a parade float with 10,000 people dancing with him. You'd be vibrating for a whole day.
Yeah. So like, okay. When I was in high school, it was like 7:30 to 2:30.
Yeah.
Are we assuming that's about what the 80s was, or was the 80s more like 8:30 to 3:30?
I honestly have no idea. I feel like we've had the exact discussion before, I think broadly 8 to 3, you're safe. I don't know what the specifics are depending on where you go around the country.
Because like they say they have till 6 o'clock, which feels arbitrary. Because like,
that's what time the dad specifically says he'll be home at 6.
But Jeannie will be home long before 6.
That's true, I suppose.
And like, wouldn't Jeannie just be like, "Hey, I'm at home. Ferris is nowhere to be found."
Yeah, that's a good point. He doesn't account for Jeannie. Although maybe Jeannie is in like a club.
I don't know.
Maybe she's in Glee Club. I could see Jeannie being a singer.
No, you can see Jeannie being a dancer.
Well, obviously, but I didn't want to get too on the nose about it. And she'd have this whole parable about her friend having an abortion.
Well, so like, and I don't know. What do you think? It takes like 45 minutes to get into the city and back. Like,
I think they're a little bit closer than that. I think it's like a half hour each way.
It's just I'm trying to like map out the day of like what time.
It's impossible.
Leave? Like,
yeah.
So
if they picked up Sloane at 9, the ball game probably starts at 1. The parade is probably at 3, and then they go home.
Yeah,
that's my rough.
I mean, yeah, but also they went to the stock market, which, as we learned in Trading Places, There's like it's only like that in the very beginning of the day, right?
So you are outside of the depth of my stock knowledge. My assumption was that they were trading like that for most of the day.
Oh, I always kind of pictured that like the first half hour to an hour was that like rush.
It's probably a big rush at the beginning of the day, big rush at the end of the day, but I think trading is happening pretty much constantly. And then the other thing to factor in here is at the time there were different exchanges in different cities that traded different commodities.
Time zones too.
Yeah, so it's possible that Chicago was. I do not know the answer. I'm just guessing vaguely.
I mean, I was literally in a commercial about stocks, and I didn't really pay attention, so couldn't tell you anything about it.
But like, you also have to factor in like they may have been trading with
China,
Japan, or whatever. Yeah, exactly. So I do not know the answer to your question. My assumption has always been the trading was pretty quick. Okay, but the order is they do Sears Tower, they do Stock Exchange, then they do the French restaurant, which is presumably around lunchtime. So if you're leaving around 9 from picking up Sloan, you get the Sears Tower done, you do the Stock Exchange.
It's funny. It would be like if in the Philadelphia version, they're like, went to the Liberty Bell, and then they went to the art museum and did the Rocky Steps, and it's like I wouldn't want to do that on my day. Like that seems like stuff you've already covered on a school field trip.
Yeah,
right?
I don't
like
disagree.
A little bit.
Yeah. I mean, the Sears Tower, they do a cool thing at the Sears Tower, and they probably only get to do it because it's empty because it's the middle of a work day. So maybe that's the pull. The stock market has always been weird to me. Of like, why would they give one crap? But I love the French restaurant bit. Obviously, is enduring because it's amazing. But this scene gives you what you asked for earlier, which is Ferris thinking on his feet to go, I'll call the police myself. And you pick it up and the camera zooms in on the series of phone numbers. This place has like 5 numbers and him dialing to get a different exchange. But I love, not only does he do the great bit where he's like, I'll yell rat, go find another phone, so that Sloan can do like, oh, he's devastatingly handsome. He's wearing a sweater vest and a t-shirt and he's, Abe Froman. But then he has it such that the guy's like, oh, the other line is active, let me check that, and it's Cameron doing his one voice
Cameron's one voice.
Hey man, it's like his adult voice, right? Like, you have your adults.
I didn't mention this earlier, I love the face he makes, because I do voices too, and sometimes it's like I can't, like, my boyfriend will see me do them and be like, oh, you really make weird faces. It's like when you do your makeup and you do that, like, you do a weird face to put your mascara on.
Yeah.
When I do my Mad Hatter voice, it's a very weird face. And he's got this like almost Ghostface Killer, almost The Scream by Edvard Munch. That's just like
it's a lot of jaw.
Yeah, it's a slack jaw pit bull.
Yeah. I just love, this is a perfect example of, a lot of the rules are completely arbitrary. And like, yes, it does suck that they took this person's reservation, but also if
this restaurant's going to let him in.
Right. And also the implication is that person doesn't show up for lunch because they eat their lunch and leave. And if the real person had shown up, they would have just thrown them out of the restaurant.
Was there a line that I missed about Ferris having like a lot of cash from birthdays or something?
No, it doesn't explain how they afforded this restaurant at all.
Okay. Because Ferris is just like flipping through a fat stack like it's nothing. And I was like, did I miss something?
He does mention that he will have a summer job later, and I do think that some of the things he does is probably financially lucrative in some way or another, whether it's like he sells his baseball cards or whatever. I think Ferris always has money, and you're kind of like, where's he have it? And they're like, is it drugs? And they're like, no, it's not, but it's weird, right?
Is it a Can't Buy Me Love thing?
I don't think so, but I guess anything is possible.
No, I didn't mean that to ask you. It was more like the adults in town are like, is it a Can't Buy Me Love situation?
But this guy's like a total schnook, and he takes his job way too seriously, and he's being a dick for the only reason is that like he's judged them by what they're wearing, and he thinks they suck. To be fair, I'd be a little upset if I was. He is right to tell a person they can't come to eat at the fancy 3-star restaurant in a hockey jersey. I think that's not an unreasonable thing.
But he's correct in assuming that this isn't Abe Froman.
Oh yes, absolutely,
because it's not.
Yes. Right, but like getting one over on this guy rules. Like he's a doofus and they get one over on him. And there's no, like I said, there's no penalty to anyone. The restaurant sells food. If the other guy showed up, they certainly would find a table for him. Like there's no loser in this thing. It's much like we've talked about pranks. Like a prank's only funny if there can't be a loser, and Ferris doesn't have a loser here.
That's true.
There's apparently a cut scene where they like can't decipher the menu and they end up like Ferris later is like, we ate pancreas. There's apparently a bit where they're like, they don't know that and they're like, what?
I'm glad they cut it. I don't think this movie doesn't need that.
No, it doesn't. We get the close call with Dad in the cab, the first of 2 close calls with Ferris's dad. Mm-hmm. And they steal his cab, which I always really enjoyed.
Yeah, that is a fun moment where they like run and as Dad turns, they like jump back.
Yes. So we cut to Rooney, who's driving into the city, and I noticed for the first time ever, the restaurant behind him as he walks into the pizza parlor on the other side of the street is an Indian restaurant. And I was like, holy cow, that seems like 15 years too early for the United States.
That would have been like the first Indian restaurant.
It has to be in the first 10. I don't know. I mean, presumably it's a big city. There's a buffer.
In the Bob's Burgers Halloween episode, it was set in the past a little bit, and she was like, we tried this new thing called Thai food.
Yeah. So I like that. And I also love, this is a perfect example of what I talked about a little bit earlier with Rooney, where it's like Rooney's envisioning a perfect day for a teenager is like, I cut school and I went and ate some pizza. And like, it's so small. And Ferris is a big ideas guy and Rooney is not. And he can't even conceive of what Ferris might do because he is such a small, his scope is small, his world is small. He just has no ambition or bigness to him.
I also feel like my first thought would be like, oh, he's probably just at home. Because that's what I would do.
Right. Well, he does eventually go to Ferris's home. That's step 2, I guess.
My first assumption is like, they're just at home. Especially, Ferris has got a pool.
Yes. I always assumed that this was maybe not a pizza restaurant in Chicago, but like in whatever, I guess it's Shermer in here as well.
In the suburb. In downtown.
Yeah. Well, I think all the Hughes movies, it's Shermer, Illinois. I don't know that to be 100% certain it's Shermer here.
But I think during Adventures in Babysitting, we determined that it was like a Downingtown to distancy.
Yeah. I think that's about right. But anyway, the pizza parlor could be not in Chicago proper is all I was getting at. Mm-hmm. But it's like, he's like, oh, they cut school to eat some pepperoni pizza. It's like, no, they cut school to eat pancreas. So we got Wrigley Field and this nice bit of business where Ferris is on the screen. First. Oh yeah.
The quick Star Wars flash.
It's a good cue. Mm-hmm. A needle drop, as they say. I guess that's not a needle drop because it's not a. I don't know if that counts as a needle drop, but whatever. It's a needle drop if it's like a pop song, but I don't know if it's a needle drop if it's the
first
cue for another. Yeah, I'm not sure if that counts. I'm not sure technically. I'll have to check with the Needle Drop Association of America.
The NDA.
Yeah, NDAA.
NDAA.
Yeah. Only slightly less corrupt than the NCAA. Wrigley Field and the bit of business where Rooney like almost catches him on the TV but doesn't is really nice.
I kind of wanted more of that, like at the parade.
Yeah.
Because there's the moment where his dad like looks out the window, but like I wanted like on TV at Mom's office or something.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I also think that this parade isn't televised.
Jeannie's at home and sees it and calls Mom to be like, turn on the TV. That would have been a great bit of business. Of and like, the Mom, turn it on now. And she's like, in a minute.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm sure it just looked like Ferris.
And Mom keeps looking at the TV when it switches to someone else. And she's like, no, keep watching. It'll go back. And she's like, I'm busy. And she looks away.
No, I love that. That would be fantastic. So Rooney goes to Ferris' house while he's at the museum.
Breaks and enters. Or tries to.
Yeah, he does. He gets in through the doggy door eventually.
Yeah. It is buck wild.
Yeah.
I also think like apparently the music for the art museum sequence took some like this is not the first version of it.
Yeah.
But like even now I think it's a weird, to me the art museum is another pump the brakes moment that I'm like, this could get trimmed out a little bit.
I like a couple of moments in it, and I think it's important for Cameron because as much as this is Ferris Bueller's movie, I mean, his name's right there in the title and everything, the character that has the most growth in this movie is Cameron. And Cameron...
Well, I would argue Ferris doesn't have an arc.
No, he doesn't. No, he definitely doesn't. Cameron and Jeannie are both affected more by Ferris, one directly and one indirectly.
Waiting for Ferris.
Yeah, waiting
it's just
for Ferris.
Jeannie and Cameron, and Ferris doesn't show up.
But Cameron is with Ferris directly, and I think there is kind of a beautifulness to Cameron kind of losing himself at this painting, where like it's a bunch of faceless.
Sunday on the Grand Shot by Georges Seurat, which became the musical Sunday in the Park with George. Stay tuned, maybe. They did a live recording.
Good God. Anyway. I think that, and this is like the fart sniffiest take I've ever had, so bear with me. But Cameron looking on this photo by Seurat, where you can't make out the faces, they're all kind of like faceless people, is a moment that's sort of catalytic for him of wanting to be a person who isn't a faceless background player. And he spends his whole life as sort of a faceless background player, and then this day with Ferris is sort of a wake-up call for him to be less of a faceless background player. I'm stretching here.
No, I mean, it's not the most I mean, like we said it before, some people think the whole movie is in Cameron's head, so that's not the craziest reading. I guess to me, like the painting itself isn't particularly I guess art is subjective, but it's not particularly evocative of that feeling to me. And like the character is just a little they push into is just like a little boy in the painting. It's not like a boy alone. It's a boy holding his mother's hand. So like it doesn't fully fit. Like, I don't know. I feel like there could have been a different painting. I'm never going to complain about Georges Seurat being in film, but like I feel like there's a more apt painting that like shows a family or a crumbling with something that like hits.
Yeah. And also maybe it's a guy who doesn't have the familial love he wants, zoning in on the character that seems in the painting that seems to have the familial love that he craves, that could also be a part of it.
And like we didn't need
I do think that the music with this painting gives you the introspective feeling that they're going for, even though I agree that it's a weird music cue. Yeah.
But like I don't need to watch Ferris and Sloane make out in a dark room. An inexplicably dark room in this art museum.
Actually have been in art museums where they have stuff like that because it's a stained glass piece that they're in front of. So it's probably a dark room with a special light for that piece to make it look right.
You're right. But like, I'm like, we didn't need that moment. Like, this could have been the Cameron moment where it's just like a ADR line on the outside, like, let's take in all this art, Cameron. And then, like, he and Sloane are, like, doing whatever. And then we see Cameron in the painting moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also think that you could just do a slight change of, like, they're all holding hands with that class of children that's kind of, like, fun and silly. And then Sloane and Ferris break off one way and Cameron breaks off the other. And Cameron ends up having this, like, really nice moment by himself that he probably wouldn't have had that day.
Yeah.
You could also read it like without my deep fart sniffy introspection of just like, this is a dude who probably doesn't get a lot of time to stare deeply at a Seurat painting. Yeah. And that's just like a rad thing he got to do that day is like really drink in a painting and stand there for 10 minutes in front of it. It's a cool thing to do
if he's
sometimes.
From a rich family, it feels like art wouldn't be that far off.
Ferris calls his house like a museum, but I always envisioned it like a museum in the way that a modernist house often is, where it's like all the furniture is of a piece and all of like everything is part of an exhibit that is the house.
Like the house, the neighbor's house in Christmas Vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Or American Psycho or whatever other example there is out there.
Did you notice?
It's a really uncomfortable couch.
Did you notice that what's on the marquee on the parade route? The movie theater marquee? No,
I don't think I did.
Teen Wolf.
Nice.
And then above that, Godzilla.
Nice. It's a Broderick little foreshadow there.
Yeah. This parade is apparently the von Steuben parade, von Steuben Day parade in Chicago, which commemorates who is the man who is widely accepted to be the homo who saved America.
Oh, I clicked on it and I saw that it was like German and something else, and then I just didn't read more.
Baron von Steuben, I don't know, whatever. I'm gonna say Steuben.
I feel like you should know this man's name based on what you just said.
I can't remember the pronunciation, but because I know it can go both ways in German. Came to Valley Forge in King of Prussia.
Okay.
Like rode up on a sled with his like young, what are they like secretary?
Oh,
but
right.
Like wink, wink. It's his secretary who follows him around, and his like fleet of puppies, and was like, "You're all terrible at war. I'm gonna fix that." But he didn't speak English, so he had to write all his stuff in German, and then someone translated it from German to English so that it could be given to the soldiers. And he like basically revolutionized the Revolutionary War, and we would not have won things.
Gonna have to look this guy up, see if there's a good
and
book or something.
It's that classic like she was a spinster lady who lived with her female best friend for the rest of time, and they took no husbands because they were just gals being pals. Like he had a lot of young men that he would tutor and quote develop intense emotional bonds with, and ended up bequeathing them things in his will. And like how many things have to be there before straight people are like, yeah, that was two dudes fucking.
Before we do the parade, I do really love the moment in the cab where they have the other near miss with Ferris's dad, the second of three, where Sloane ends up like making the kissy faces. But I love the little moment where Ferris and Cameron are like frantically rubbing their rabbit's foot back and forth.
It's a nice little bit.
It's the only part where Ferris comes down to earth a little bit. It's like, oh shit. Like I might, this one might be too much even for me. That little bit is great, I think. So obviously we got to talk about the parade. We'd probably do a whole podcast on this
Kenny Ortega
sequence.
spectacle.
Yeah. Broderick hurt his knee filming the final sequence. And
really?
They had this elaborate choreo, and he was hurt and couldn't really do it. And so they were like, you know what? You shouldn't have choreo anyway. And so they did like a couple takes with him doing the modified
Kenny
choreo.
Ortega was so mad. Like he could just whip his ponytail.
I think it makes total sense that there's that kind of silly moment that everybody clowns on where like the whole troop of people come up across the stairs and they're like in sync. But I do think that could just be like a dance troupe that happened to be there and they're like, oh, we can do this song. Like this will be fun.
Yeah.
I can buy it in the fiction, but it would be silly if all of the people in the crowd were doing choreo, because it's like, there's just a crowd of people. It's not the end of a prom sequence in a 90s high school movie. Like it's just a parade.
So anything that you see of a crowd shot where it's not like distinct unified choreography was literally just extras doing their thing, and they didn't realize they were being filmed at first.
well, there was like in the commentary he talks about two things. One, the part where the judges are confused, he says that they just stuck their float at the end of the parade and didn't tell the judging panel. Like they had permission to film and do this stuff, but the judges weren't aware that the film float was in. And so there was genuine confusion of like, what is this? Which seems crazy to me to be true, but I don't know. That's what he says. I take him as word, but he said it basically was like him on a bullhorn being like, all right, we're gonna skip the choreo, so just dance. Everybody just dance when the music's on.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that those judges wouldn't know. Like, if it's anything like a pride parade, there's some slapdash shit going on.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's like how hard, if they knew that they were filming the movie, like how would it not also relay the fact that there'd be a float in the parade? It just seems crazy.
Yeah.
He also said, while you're thinking of your point, he also said he really, really hated Dankeschön. Like the song was really popular when he was young, and it also was a song he took German in high school, and they listened to the song in his class and stuff, and he just like hated it, and so he picked it because he hated it so much that it was like the corniest song he could imagine.
It was a lot of extras. They basically just like put an ad in the paper or on the radio. They're like, hey, come be an extra in a John Hughes movie. And way more people showed up than they were expecting.
I buy that. It's very crowded.
And Matthew Broderick was very nervous about it, which is weird because he's like a Broadway dude. Like he's used to performing live in front of crowds.
I think he might have been nervous like for his safety. Like that's a borderline riot you're in the middle of.
Well, also, I mean, just for parade logistics standpoint, at the end, the crowd is just around, like on the street surrounding the float.
Yes.
Like that's not a parade anymore.
No, that's a mob scene. Like I'm sure that was a little frightening. But yeah, he lip syncs to the beat. He lip syncs Dankeschön. It's kind of like cute and silly. And we do get one of my favorite lines in the whole movie, actually, which is a smaller one of the many very quotable. But Cameron and Sloane kind of get led away from the parade because they rush towards it while he's singing Dankeschön. And they kind of have this discussion of like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And she's like, neither do I. And they're like, what do you think Ferris is going to do? And right before Twist and Shout kicks in, Cameron turns and he says he's going to be a fry cook on Venus, which is just like, I love the idea of like, of course, Ferris Bueller will be one of the people they send to Venus, but also he's going to do like a menial job there because he's not going to want to do something difficult.
I think for the longest time, I just assumed Venus was like a restaurant, a chain restaurant, a Midwest chain restaurant.
Yeah.
Like how In-N-Out is out there on the West Coast.
Yeah, yeah. But it's like, I'll be a fry cook on Venus. And then it's like that great crunchy guitar drum riff that opens Twist and Shout. And we immediately whip over to Ferris, who's just like, I'm having the greatest time of my whole life right now.
And I think that discussion was what kind of like struck for me. Like, oh, this movie doesn't read the same when you're an adult because the listless, the sort of rudderless experience is very different at 28. 29.
I guess the other thing I would say, and I didn't want to push back on you too hard at the beginning, is like, I don't get rudderless from this at all. Like, Ferris is going to college, Cameron's going to college, Sloane is. The only thing Ferris seems unsure about is his relationship with Sloane and how that'll progress when he's the discussion, she's not.
The discussion Cameron and Sloane have is like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'll go to college, but I don't know what for. I don't have any interests.
Right.
So like, that to me is where the rudderlessness comes in.
Yeah, I feel like rudderlessness implies a bigger, like, nobody knows what the fuck there's like 18 people that knew what they wanted to do when they were 18 years old. It's like a very small number. I mean, I'm being a little exaggerated for 18, but like, I think that's a relatively small percentage of people that feel like they know what they want to do before they go off to college. So I don't know that I think rudderless feels big to me for that moment. Rudderless to me implies a little bit of despair. Whereas it's just like, maybe it's aimless versus rudderless. I'm being a little quibbly here, but it's like, I get the point you're saying, but it seems if you're feeling that way when you're 28, it does feel a little depressive. If you're feeling that way when you're 18, I don't think it feels depressive at all.
That's what I'm saying.
Right. I'm just saying
the movie hits differently when you're 18 because it's like, I can be whatever I want. Blah blah. Like it feels more hopeful than like when you're 29 watching this. Like, if I don't know what I want to do. Womp womp.
There are people who decide to go back to school when they're in their late 70s and they just do it for them. Like,
that's true.
If you're not sure what you want to do, you'll figure something out eventually, and just keep plowing forward is what I suggest.
Or you get a theater degree and then you end up doing admin and phone service work.
Right, but like, I got a journalism degree. I don't do journalism really. It's just you figure it out along the way. We get Rooney versus Jeannie here in the house, which is like just bonkers that he's broken into the house.
Yes.
And the fact that she calls the cops and ends up getting arrested and brought down to the station over it is just inconceivable.
It's crazy. Also, they only filmed one kick.
Yes, you can tell it's looped because it's identical. But she does a good snap kick, a little Dirty Dancing preview perhaps.
So in this scene, we see that there's a staircase over Jeannie's shoulder that goes up.
They have a double staircase.
But no one ever uses the back staircase.
Right.
There's
not a lot of business in the Bueller house, really.
But like, Jeannie runs to the foyer to run upstairs. And I was like, there was a staircase right behind you. And then later
That's a good point.
When Ferris comes in the house and she says like, go right upstairs, he goes up the front staircase.
Maybe the back staircase only goes to like their parents' bedroom or something.
Maybe, but it just seemed weird to me that like there is clearly a back staircase.
Yeah, no, I know exactly.
The two moments in the movie where it seems applicable, no one uses it.
Rooney gets towed, and I love the part where he like runs and tries to open his passenger side door, and then he leaves the keys in it, and he's like, "Wait, my keys!" And it's like, you could still catch him there, bud. Like, it's the car's pulling away from you very slowly.
It's a runaway train situation. You could have jumped on that train.
Exactly. So here's Cameron loses it, and then Jeannie is back at the house. And
well, you see the attendants drive the car back into the garage, only to hand it right to them.
Yes. It's like still smoking from the tires practically. And another one that I've always found deeply confusing in this is Jeannie answers the door, and it's like someone sent him a prostitute.
With Louis Anderson?
With Louis Anderson dressed as a milkman for some reason.
It's a weird,
but like, he's
weird
a
combo.
He's an underage boy. Like he is not old enough.
I wasn't sure if it was just supposed to be like remember how in pop culture in like the 80s and 90s like erotic bakeries were a thing? Like
okay, sure. She says, I came to help restore your pluck because I'm the nurse that likes to door slam.
But I'm saying maybe it's just like I'm a slutty singing telegram. Like
no,
it's
she
not
is
a
there
sex
to do.
thing.
She is there to do sex.
But then
stuff.
why is she flanked by Louis Anderson and two other dudes with bouquets?
I don't know. I almost wonder if it's concurrent delivery situation.
I always kind of assumed that it was just like some weird niche thing of like busty singing telegram.
Or maybe Louis Anderson is her bodyguard to make sure things don't get out of control.
Okay, fair.
He's got some heft to him. Plus, he's carrying that milk jug. He'd mess you up with that milk jug. You wouldn't want to get hit with that.
Cameron freaks out at the odometer. And this is where we're talking about, like, I think the river scene can be cut. And I think the information about Cameron could have been peppered throughout.
Yeah. You either have to cut the pool or the other thing, and I would be fine with either. But I do like the part here where Ferris is like, I see the end of the road of this friendship. And that's the other part of it that I didn't touch on earlier because I didn't want to spoil this. But Ferris is talking about, like, we have a couple months left of school, then we're going to get jobs, then we're both going to go off to college, and we'll see each other occasionally. And I see this is going to fizzle out. And part of the reason he's so pushy to make sure Cameron comes with them on this is it does feel like he wants this to be a big last hurrah where like the two of them have a big adventure. And they have this moment to always look back on together, even if their friendship drifts apart. They don't really stay in touch. They will always have this special day together.
That's fair, but like to me, the idea that like you have one friend from high school throughout your life isn't shocking or like weird to me.
I don't have. Like, I kind of have one.
I have 3 or 4. I don't have a lot, but like 3 or 4 friends that I I text we text every few months, just have a little conversation about what's going on. But like, I don't know. It's not like if they're best friends, it doesn't seem weird. It seems weird for him to be like, well, we're never going to talk again. I'm like, well, aren't you best friends?
He doesn't say we'll never talk again. He says it'll never be like this again, which is true. Like that is always true. That is inevitable.
Yeah. I mean, fair. It won't be like this again, but I don't know. The finality of that statement always seemed weird to me because I was like, you are friends though. Yeah.
I mean, I just think it's a reasonable assumption that you're going to drift. And it's also the thing that I talked about before of like, this is a 40-year-old person, a person in their 40s putting the words in the mouth of a 17-year-old. Like it's going to not line up perfectly. But yeah. I in this case, I think it's like good wisdom. And like, it's something that I struggled with when I was in high school as a senior. And it was like, those people feel like the most important people in the world to you and that they'll always be that. And like Dad had a pretty frank conversation with me where it's like, I have one person that I speak to in high school and like your mom might have a few more than me, but it's not a lot more than me. And it's like, you just kind of have to have that reality check. And I think that's what it is with Ferris is like, I'm sure that we'll be Christmas card friends forever, but it'll never be like this. And that's what he's like really honing in on. It's like, it'll never be like this again. And you have to make this feel special while you can. Yeah, that's fair. So we go to the pool, which I think is at Ferris's house. It's never 100% explained. It's Ferris's house. Well, no, it can't be Ferris's house because then he has to run home. So it must be Sloan has a pool. No, because they have to, because afterwards they go to. Oh, they take the car back. Yeah. But Ferris wouldn't need to be there for that. That part has always felt the pool. Well, no, because it is Ferris's pool because he's there in the beginning. Right. Well, Ferris is at a pool in the beginning, but I don't know if it's this pool. I think it's the same pool. But I'm just. It seems weird to introduce 2 pools. Well, it also seems weird to me because like there's I guess the sequence must be that's. I don't know how they get. You lose the thread here because it's like we're at the pool, then we're at Cameron's garage, then we're at Sloane's house. We don't know how we got to Sloane's house, and then Ferris runs home from Sloane's house. So I don't know.
It says Ferris walks her home on Wikipedia. So
okay, maybe that's what it is. Anyway, we get this kind of uncomfortable moment where Cameron is like, "Oh, I just pretended to be catatonic," and like Ferris saved me, and then it's like, "Oh, also I watched Sloane get naked in front of me," which is kind of weird.
I enjoy the Ferris Bueller "You're my hero" moment because it feels like a little retribution of like, you put me through hell a little bit in the beginning of today.
Yes.
I return the favor. It's weird when you stop and think too long that like he was catatonic, quote, 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 for, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Time was an illusion.
Yeah.
But like the idea that he was like, the way for me to get back at Ferris is to jump in the pool and wait for him to pull me out. I like that moment because you see Ferris sweat, which only happens twice in this movie.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. I'm like, Sloane, why did you change him?
Why were you changing outside at the pool, Sloane?
Right. It's a weird choice. Anyway, she doesn't seem bothered by it. She laughs it off. She's like, well, I'm not ashamed. But it was just like kind of the whole concept is kind of strange.
Yeah.
Cut to the police station with Jeannie and Charlie Sheen. And I think this should be the scene that they cut out and show to people in acting class when they're like, here, you've heard that dumb thing of like, there's no small parts, only small actors. Here's Charlie Sheen in 6 minutes tops, 4, whatever it is.
A weekend role.
Super memorable. Comes in with a strong character choice, uses that character choice to inform the whole character. What you described before of this insane tangled web of his family and the Buellers notwithstanding, which I'm fine, put that away. But just kills it here. Like absolutely crushes it here. It's super, super, super good.
Well, he stayed awake for like 2 full days to get this look. He wanted that like deep sunken red eye look.
Right.
Which,
he looks strung out. I guess
knowing Charlie Sheen, like maybe he didn't do that. Maybe he just did some cocaine. Allegedly.
It's possible. He does Tiger Blood, I believe.
That's right.
Also, I didn't mention this before, but I want to hit it real quick because we're on the way out the door here. When there's the scene with Sloane and Ferris's dad, are we to believe that Ferris's parents have not yet met Sloane? Because you'd think that he would recognize her when she's making kissy faces at him.
Oh, maybe not. I feel like she should have been like wearing his Kangol hat, like with her hair tucked up in it, and sunglasses.
Right. Yeah. So Charlie Sheen drops some sage wisdom, and this is another point I think in the favor of Ferris Bueller's Not an Asshole, because at the point where he's talking with Jeannie and he's giving her some good advice, and like he's like, you gotta let loose a little bit, you're so uptight, and her thing is like complaining about Ferris. He eventually gets to like, I think there's a guy that could really help you, and to me, what he's saying is like a person whose life philosophy, they're a person who shares their philosophy freely with those who are interested in receiving it and who you should talk to. And she's like, if you say Ferris Bueller, you lose a testicle. He's like, oh, so you know him.
Yeah. That's true.
That's to me part of the thing I talked about before of like, I think Ferris is this like very giving, kind person who wants to help other people. And he wants everybody to live like kneecaps. Him. So we're trying to run the car miles back. It's not working. Cameron goes berserk and he kicks the car and
I don't love this
engages. I don't either. But what I'll say to you here is it doesn't take a whole second before Ferris is like, I'm taking the heat on this. There's no hesitation. It's not the kind of offer you hope someone is talking you out of. Before the car has completely exited the building, practically, Ferris is like, I'm taking the heat on this. And it's not like, it's not like a negotiation. It's like, let me take this. I'm taking this for you. Mm-hmm. Because he's like, your dad already hates me. It doesn't matter. And it's like very real jail time is a possibility here. Like, totally, totally possible. This is like totally possible, this jail time. But he like, an asshole would not speak up, or they would speak up after enough time has passed that they know they're not going to get taken up on it. He doesn't wait. It doesn't wait a whole second before he jumps in to help his friend here.
Yeah, but I don't know. It just, to me, the growth that Cameron gets, I don't feel is the arc I want for that character. Like destroying his dad's car, his beloved prized car does not feel like the end of that arc.
No.
Like, you don't need that to happen to be like, I'm going to be my own person.
Right.
Because, like, if you're going to college soon, you're going to be away from your parents soon. And if you don't want to talk to your family, you don't have to. Like, if you have shitty family, you can go deuces.
Yeah, but I totally agree with you. Like, there's other ways to get through this. It's a movie. Like, you need a big moment. It needs to be big. Like, it's crazy to drop a car out of this crazy Frank Lloyd Wright looking house. Like, that's all it is here. But they do have this moment that I think is really important where Ferris is like, it was my idea. I made us do this or whatever. And Cameron's like, no, it is possible to stop the great Ferris Bueller. And it, like you said, Ferris only sweats twice.
Because so far in this movie, it seems like...
Well, you said Ferris only sweats twice, but Broderick's reaction to that line is, to me, like, oh, he's right. Like, Broderick's face reaction to that line is that Cameron is saying the truth here. That, like, if I wanted to stand up to you, I would. I did this because I also wanted to do it.
Yeah,
like I let you I let you be the engine of the desire, but I wanted to do it also.
I suppose. I don't know. It just always feels a little like fair. I guess, like, I don't know, in whatever weird, rewrite version, like, Ferris writes a note and leaves it in the mailbox so that, like, Cameron doesn't know about it.
Yeah.
Something that says, like, you don't deserve this, Cameron. Like, Cameron doesn't deserve the hellfire that he's going to get.
No. I mean, Cameron probably got beat with a belt. Like I have no doubt in my mind.
Cameron probably ended up in the river. Like,
right.
Like, he probably ended up in duct tape sterilite tubs, tossed into the Chicago River, or I don't know, whatever river is in Chicago.
Well, yeah.
Like, that's what happened to Cameron. And so, to me, I feel like something that says Ferris realizing that, like, I don't know, something that says Ferris, there's a difference between, like, I'm taking the blame for this and being, like, insistent that, like, under no circumstances can you handle what's about to happen. I am going to do this.
But Cameron's speech is to say that I know that you don't think I can handle this, but I can. Like, that's the whole growth moment for the character is like the character is okay.
You know what I mean? Like, to me, it doesn't feel like the growth arc of the character doesn't feel like it's hit. Like, for me personally, I don't feel like Cameron is truly ready to deal with that. I don't.
Okay, your perception is probably valid, but the character is believes that they're ready to stand in this spotlight. And so, like, as a friend, what are you supposed to do? Like, you've been there, right? You've had friends be ready to put themselves out there in a way that you don't think they're ready for, and you don't talk them out of it. That's bad friend stuff.
I suppose.
Like, his friend is trying to, like, take the reins of his life in a way that he has never done before. And for Ferris to talk Cameron out of doing that would be really, really bad friend stuff. Even if it means Cameron ends up getting thrown in the river, which I think is probably likely. Like, Ferris is being a supportive friend by, one, offering to take the blame, and then two, when Cameron makes this big emotional speech of, like, I've let this man push me around my whole life and treat me like shit, and I'm not going to do that anymore, and this is my big fuck you moment to the man that I realize I don't like my dad, and I'm going to tell him to his face. And Cameron is, like, ready to make that leap. So Ferris, as a good friend, has to stand behind him and be like, all right, bud, I'm here for you. I mean, I don't think you're wrong.
That's fair.
I don't think you're wrong, but I think a good friend in this moment, like, lets their friend take the reins when they try to. And so, like, yes, you're right. Cameron isn't ready for this, but Ferris is being a good friend here, I think.
Okay, that's a fair reading. I can get behind that.
Okay. Police station. Jeannie is smooching with Charlie Sheen, which is a delight. Mama Bueller's all upset about it. And then I love the police chief being like, who is, like, one of two not white people in the whole movie, BT Dubs, is like, we're all pulling for Ferris. Make sure he knows the boys here are behind him. And she's like, what? What are you talking about?
Well, it was also in a newspaper earlier that his dad didn't see.
It was in a newspaper. It's on the water tower, and it's on the marquee at Wrigley Field as well.
Yeah, it's
Save Ferris.
Disney parents, they're clueless.
They are, but that's, like, part of they're loving and dumb instead of being mean and dumb, which is usually how these things go.
That's what I meant earlier when I said it feels like a Disney movie for like, older teenagers.
Right. So this is a great action sequence here. Ferris like sprinting home. It's a fun bit. Like Jeannie trying to catch him in the car. She's getting the speeding ticket. He's running past his dad.
Well, I also like Jeannie and Mrs. Bueller. Like Mrs. Bueller starts yelling at Jeannie, and Jeannie's like, "I can't drive with you screaming at me." And I just had flashbacks of like learning to drive with Dad.
Yeah. Yes. Not perhaps the best teacher behind the wheel.
Great driver now, though.
Yeah.
I am a great driver is what I was saying. I didn't mean to say that my father was not a good driver, but like overall it turned out a good driver.
But this is another part that I think speaks to Ferris Bueller as an asshole. Is like Jeannie is trying to get him here, right? Like she's totally trying to pwn him. But in the end, when Ferris's goose is cooked, Jeannie bails him out because she's thinking about what Charlie Sheen said to her, and she's also thinking like, I think it would be better if I was a little more like Ferris, just a little more like Ferris.
Well, I also could potentially read it as like, if anyone's going to bust Ferris, it's going to be me, not
totally.
Not Jeffrey Jones over here.
Yeah, like she knows that Rooney sucks, it's true. He stinks.
I think she truly also hates Rooney.
Yeah, well, Rooney sucks. Like Rooney is a universally despised villain, which is probably why Ferris becomes a folk hero in the school, because like Ferris is always getting one over on Rooney and not getting caught, and people are like, this guy fucking rules, man.
He rules, dude.
You left your wallet on the kitchen table or on the floor of the kitchen is great. Rooney like tucking tail between his legs. And then this like you've caught your breath from the final chase sequence and you think we're like over. Ferris is rushing to the bedroom and we have that one final moment where he has to hit the baseball against the stereo. It's like, that's just a really good capper on it. It's good writing. I like that a lot. Yeah. And then the credit sequence with Rooney on the bus is a fun, like, I agree. I think yours with, I think what we talked about earlier of like getting Edie McClurg back in here for a moment would be great. I would like that.
Oh, yeah. Why don't you hop on in?
Yeah.
She has like, I do like McDonald's, a bag of McDonald's or something.
Yeah. Or like maybe she has a convertible.
Would you want some fries?
I want her to have like a cooler car. Like she's secretly like she's really
got
fun.
One of the other 100 Ferraris.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, maybe it's not a Ferrari on a school secretary salary, but
hair wrapped in a scarf.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Toodaloo, Ed.
Do you want a scarf, Ed?
And then the very probably the first time. Well, the first time I was aware of it anyway, maybe there were other movies that did it, but the final after credit sequence where Ferris is in the towel and he's like, "What are you doing here? Go home. The movie's over." I enjoyed that the first time I caught it on our tape, and I have always liked it.
I wouldn't be mad if there was like after Ferris's parents went away, like Jeannie was left in the doorway, like, you owe me one, right?
Yeah.
And then like shut the door on him, and then we could get his little look to the camera.
I think that's totally fine. I think that would be totally fine. I will say I think this is the movie the least enjoyable to do a check-in sequel. Like I'm desperately hoping it never happens because there is just no fun to be had. This movie captures. Even Broderick has said he's like, this captures a specific high school time period. He's like, the only idea I've ever liked is the same thing is happening again, but we're both 70 and Ferris breaks Cameron out of his nursing home because Cameron checked himself in on, like, Cameron booked himself into a nursing home before he needed it because he's like, I'm done. Life is over and I don't care anymore. And Ferris is like, no, Cameron, there's more to live. I think that idea is funny. That's sort of like
Morgan Freeman and Robert De Niro or something.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like one of those Morgan Freeman like Bucket List or one of those movies. Is that vibe? But like, yeah, this is a guy you can't check in on. I'm sure Ferris is happy and has a good life. I'm sure it's less epic than you would want it to be. Like he's probably a car salesman, or he probably like I don't know what he ended up doing.
I mean,
like, sales feels natural. He could have
charmed his way into Congress.
Oh, for sure. He could be a corrupt congressman, no problem. But this is a character like I have no interest in revisiting. And they keep like doing cutesy little advertisements for it. Like not the movie, but like ads will call back to this. There's one that came out like last year.
I'm fine with that. Honestly, like if that satiates everyone's appetites for like remakes of stuff, fine. I will have 100 commercials where Sigourney Weaver takes Tums so that a chest burster doesn't come out of her. Like, that's fine with me.
Yeah, the one that came out most recently was Alan Ruck, who plays Cameron, these two kids are like doing the dialogue from Ferris Bueller in front of the Ferrari, and then you hear Alan Ruck's voice come over and it's like, "Hey, what are you two doing?" And it's like a car door opener with a video camera built into it that you can like monitor when there's motion. So he gets tipped off, and then it cuts
like
to
a
him.
Ring doorbell.
Yeah, basically, and then he cuts to him at his desk, like in overlooking the Chicago skyline, and he's like, "Already did that one," and like that's the end of it. It's like, all right, that's fine, but that's yeah.
Cute. Well, I think there was a commercial with the two parking garage attendants at one point.
Yes, I don't think it's them, but I think it was one of those. Was it one of those DirecTV where they like superimpose the face kind of thing?
Maybe, I think so.
Yeah. All right. Final thoughts / did I convince you that Ferris Bueller is not an asshole?
I think you brought some compelling arguments. I don't know that I'm going to think about this. I'm not really going to think long and hard about this.
You haven't been thinking about this for the last 2 hours? Come on.
I am swayed slightly, but I'm okay. Maybe not as firmly in my camp as I was.
All right. I'll
say.
take it. That's movement. That's progress. Yeah. Any other thoughts about the movie?
It's a great, if you've never seen it, who are you? Watch it. But like, yeah, I definitely think it hits different as an adult than it does as a teenager, but that's me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I found myself really enjoying it and like genuinely laughing at a bunch of parts of it, which I guess speaks to just letting time lapse between seeing movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fell in love with this movie again, and it was like I didn't expect to do that.
Good.
And it was really quite lovely. So yeah, I've been in a good movie zone lately. I've been watching a lot of stuff that's really been pleasant and fun to me. And this, I'm sure, was greased. The wheels were a little greased because I've been watching all sorts of just like hitting the pleasure center of my brain over and over again lately. But yeah, I couldn't believe how much I still loved this and still was so charmed by it. And I think the movie still totally works and is like shockingly free of misogyny and homophobia and all of the other stuff that peppers even the John Hughes catalog. So it was just like, oh man, there's like almost nothing in this that isn't enjoyable, except for the fact that some of the people in it turned out to be not great people. Yeah, but yeah, this movie endures for a reason. It's like pure joy in cinema form, I think, and high recommend from over here. So
I definitely recommend it.
Yeah. I mean, I would be surprised to hear you say you hated it, but yeah, I knew I always liked this more than you, so it was fun to have this little conversation. But Ferris Bueller's not an asshole, as I've said, so go forth and spread the message. Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you haven't done so yet, please review it. I've got one to read for you here as we wrap things up. This is a latest iTunes review, and this comes from MX Sandy 12 via Apple Podcasts. This is retro fun at its finest. 5 stars. Thank you very much, MX Sandy. Love this podcast. The hosts are intelligent and charming and engaging about an epic era in cinema. That's very kind of you. They give you all the details and insider info while still sounding like your best friends at the bar. You guys got a listener for life.
That might be Mix Sandy.
Yep, could be. I'm an old, so
that's okay.
But anyway, that's really, really kind. Thank you very much for sending that in. If you want to hear your review read on the air, well, then open up your favorite podcast player, write the review, and if it's not iTunes, send us a screenshot, dissectingthe80s@gmail.com. We read those on the air if you send them to us. Don't forget to check us out, dissectingthe80s.com, at dissectthE80s on Twitter, and dissectingthe80s on Facebook. Mm-hmm. We will be back in 2 weeks with the start of, as we said at the top of the show, WrestleMania. Watching another one of Kurt's that I haven't revisited in a long time. This would be fun for me to jump in on. We're doing Big Trouble in Little China.
I'm very curious.
You've never seen that one?
I don't think so.
This is like peak Russell Rules cool guy cinema. So I'm very curious to see how it lands for you.
Or is that
no, that's Snake Plissken is Metal Gear, but no, damn it. Now you got me all mixed up.
I'm sorry.
Solid Snake is Metal Gear Solid, and that is a loose riff off of Snake Plissken, who is Escape from New York.
Oh, that's Kurt Russell too, right?
That is Kurt Russell. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. This is a different Kurt Russell as a big rig driver.
Okay.
I haven't rewatched it in a long, long time, but the first time I watched it, the only time I watched it, I was like maybe 10 years ago, and I was like, holy cow, this movie rules, and I bought it. So okay. I own it, so we'll see. But go check out Big Trouble in Little China, and we will see you in 2 weeks on March 8th. So until then, thank you so much for listening. I have been Tripp Lano.
I will always be Andrew Lano.
Until next time.
Don't you forget about me.
Dissecting the 80s is a Chum Some of This production. Ow.